We'll have the Honourable Shane Jones.
Kia ora no tātou. I, sir, want to take on board the admonition offered by the Chair that we focus on the part of the bill, otherwise known as Part 1, and I want to direct our attention, sir, to pages 10 and 11. Now, sir, I see some complications, and I'd be interested to get a response from the Minister. I'm imagining that work is taking place, sir, in relation to how the High Court is actually going to deal with what are, perhaps for many of the High Court judges and indeed the lawyers representing the parties in the inevitable litigation, the notion of mana tukuiho and tangata whenua. Now, I'm presuming, sir, that the High Court is exploring whether or not it's going to need additional expertise, or whether or not some of the, dare I use the term, tikanga of the court need to be amended. Although I would note, sir, recently Christian Fata, certainly one of the most able young Māori lawyers of his generation, is about to join that august company, recently left by... he has done. Well, unfortunately, Mr Ririnui, a man of Waiariki origins, didn't extend a pōhiri when he went to the Hakari and the feast for Christian Fata to myself and Calvin Davis from the Ngāpuhi, so we could continue our peace-loving ways in that part of Aotearoa. However, sir, it's good that there will be Māori High Court judges there, but I would hope that the Minister could take a call on that, because whilst we're full of passion and we're making various political points, this bill, after it eventually finds its way permanently into the landscape of statutory law, someone is actually going to have to pick it up in 2014, 15, 16, 17 and make decisions on behalf of groups, whether or not are they a hapu, are they an iwi, and sir, an element. So I would direct your attention to Purpose 141B. Now, sir, it goes to the heart of what this bill is about. This bill, according to that section, sir, is to recognise an ill-defined mana tukuiho concept exercised by the tangata whenua, iwi and hapu. And I can assure you, sir, after having spent many years, along with one or three other Māori MPs in this House, dealing with these issues in a different part of the coastal environment called the fishing industry, I can assure you, sir, this will be hotly litigated. This will be hotly debated. Now, I'm imagining, sir, that a judge will actually, at the end of the day, draw on what has been defined as an iwi in the actual fisheries settlement. And if that proves to be the case, and the Minister and the Chair's nodding in the right direction, then I think that is a sensible way to go. But don't for a moment, sir, imagine that that's going to bring litigation to an end. Unfortunately, it is going to, and it's a further example of the bill, and it might be said that any bill, once we endeavour to bring our Māori terminology into the law, and on that score, so I don't think it's a bad idea, unlike our friends from the ACT Party. And sir, I'm not going to let it pass that they can stand unchallenged and, sir, imagine that they're going to be rewarded for trying to deprecate Māori culture by analogising it to Alice in Wonderland. I want you to know, sir, want the House to know, sir, that one of the figures out of Alice in Wonderland was a dodo. Sir, and then that is the way in which that party, if they continue to deprecate those members in this House of Māori descent and the passion with which we seek to maintain culture and pass it on to the next generation. So I'd encourage members of that party and their supporters, perhaps the dodos are Muriel Newman and that gaggle of personalities whose viral means are trying to leave us with the impression that the country is overrun by angry rednecks hating Māori language coming into the legislation. I can't help it, sir, if they're actually Don Brash's voters, and they were on that side of the House, and now they're disappearing elsewhere. But anyway, more about the Mad Hatters at a later stage. So I want to come to item 6. Now that I've signalled, sir, that the High Court, if measures haven't been taken, it ought to ensure that its tikanga and rules are evolved to deal with these challenging issues, but more importantly, sir, that we have the right level of expertise there, because I am a great believer in the inherent jurisdiction of the High Court, sir. I see it, and I've said earlier that it was a bleak day, that we left that very vague and ambiguous in our time. Mr. Chair.
Honourable Shane Jones.
Mr. Chair, so I'm on record as saying that, so it'd be good to know that that is the case. So I want to move right along to item 6, and I'm imagining that what the Minister is putting before the House here, sir, is a distillation as to what really is going to be the responsibilities in international law of the Crown, given that we're going forward with an idea where the actual seabed and foreshore, takutai moana, coastal space, etc., is not going to be vested in the Crown as such, but it's going to be sort of open space, public space, takiwa maria. It's on the top of my head. That's my translation for coastal and open and public space. But, sir, I would caution us against providing any opportunity in this bill which allows, quite frankly, under this bill, for a debate and a legal tussle, sir, as to what is the scope of the Crown's sovereignty. Because the logical conclusion, sir, is that once you strip away the Crown as being the putative owner or the exclusive owner on behalf of society, and you introduce this other notion, and it will be challenged, sir, in the courts as to what is public space, etc., to private property rights, even if they're customary associations, customary interests, or perhaps enforceable rights. How far do they stretch, and how far does the notion of an unfettered public space dimension actually go? So, sir, I think that a bit of clarification around there, because the notion that this bill would turn from a debate about historic associations, residual interests, into a debate as to are there any subsisting sovereignty elements in the actual seabed and foreshore other than the ability of a democratically elected government to regulate. So, sir, I unfortunately was not on the select committee save for one or two meetings, and I'm not actually apprised of how far that was explored by explored, sir, by submitters. But it is an important point, sir. It is an important point. Now, sir, unlike the lucidity which is evident in my speech, questions on the day from the member who's hollering, he, sir, also could be a part of the Alice in Wonderland fairyland tale, but his questions, sir, generally bamboozled the submitters. So even when I was there, where there were people wanting to answer the question from Paul Quinn, such was the ambiguity around his question, he was consistently told to turi turi or keep quiet by the chair. By the chair. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how well they get along amongst each other. But sir, I want to now come to this notion that the marine and coastal area, because, sir, in page 15 there is, and the Act spokesman has already referred to it, there is an assumption according to him, sir, because we have defined it out there on the horizon, Te Paeroa, the horizon, and on the sort of mean high water spring, that somehow this represents, sir, an opportunity for muck and gouging. Now, sir, where there is ambiguity, that should be addressed. And if that is the case, I don't think it's unreasonable, sir, that the Minister should, during the course of our deliberations, stand and say, look, this is just a simple physical description. It doesn't represent an assignment of potential wealth or residual interests that will one day grow from being perhaps a rock or a defined discrete area that a hapu still has, and then somehow grow into all the iron sands off the west coast of Te Ikaroa Mau, which unfortunately will be of no good to my iwi because we're on the east coast, on the far north, and as a consequence of iwi activists, not the least of which is Margaret Mutu, our settlement gets further and further away, but that's another matter. That's another matter. And I don't mean to actually be personal in any denigratory way, sir, in any manner or form. I just want, sir, it known that I'm not motivated when I mention iron sands, sir, but I do think it's a reasonable point. The Minister should be able, and I've got my senior colleague here, he and I both have some concerns about these ambiguities because there's a host of changes, And if what is at stake in a significant natural resource that is valuable to the overarching interests of the country, then it's good for the minister to say, no, look, that is not actually going to be lost.
I call the